Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Lofty N Scaler. I'm Curtis, the Lofty N Scaler, and we're doing a live show today because I was editing what I wanted to do, and it was just a mess. And my laptop, I'm traveling, so my laptop that I use really can't um, edit the footage that well. It's a MacBook Air. It's a few years old, and it was the base model. So anyway, um, I'm going to do a live show. We'll see how that goes. So you'll see all my slips and mistakes. So when I was talking about in my previous episodes about tracks and the things I'm going to be using, I'm going to be using Unitrack was the initial thing, but now I've decided I'm going to be using three different types of track. Three. The first is going to be Atlas Code 55, and the reason is because that's what I have. I don't have to invest anything more than what I already have, and I've got a bunch of switches, a bunch of flex track, and so I can get quite a bit done with just that. If I were going to start off using Unitrack, then I would have to actually invest in switches and things like that, and I just don't have the funds for it right now to invest in that. I am going to use the Unitrack though, and then thirdly, I'm going to use Atlas Code 80 track. And of course, my phone decides to ring. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to be using the Atlas Code. It rings on my phone, and then it rings on the computer. So the phone talks to the computer, and so it figures, well, I don't want to answer it on the phone, so it rings on the computer. Sorry about that. So we're going to Atlas Code 80 track, and I'm going to use that because I've got a bunch of it. I've got a bunch of these switches that I bought right here. They've got the motor built into them, and it's not going to be a scenic part of the layout. So having the motor right there on the side is fine. It's just going to be a staging yard for passenger trains. So they have a place to go to and sit before they come back to Union Station. So one of the things that I've been using is the Cam Connect. In my last episode, I connected two pieces of 4-foot pieces of Cam Connect. And I'm using 1 and 3/4 inch foam on top of it. So I wanted a way that I can, one of the things, the reason why I wanted to use Unitrack was to not have to have a switch machine under the layout coming up through it to switch the machine, because I wanted it to be embedded in the foam. So then I thought, well, what if I did embed it into the foam? What if I took that switch machine, mounted the switch to a board or something, and then just cut out a square for that switch machine to go into? Now, I've been using, and this is kind of an example, a mock-up of what I've kind of come up with. And this is just a prototype, guys. So this is not the finished thing. Now, Tam Valley makes this wood mount for servos, and then I can mount a inexpensive servo to this here, and I just have this hot glued to this foam core, and then on top you can see the wire coming through here, and this is not permanent by any means. It'll switch that switch, and if I can just make a square, I can just drop it into the foam and then bring the cord out down below so I can hook it into the machine. So the decoder that I would use for this would be a Tam Valley, a singlet micro switch servo. And this is DCC. It's right here. Tam Valley makes a couple different variants for servos. This is the one that I used on my last layout. They worked perfectly. They were really flawless. They do not have local net feedback. It's just a DCC decoder. So if it gives it the signal to switch and it doesn't switch, then the system won't know it. But I've never known it to not switch or to fail to switch. This is a little fascia plug, and then it has red and green. And if you wanted to plug this on the outside, you can plug it. I use this to center the servo. So you can press and hold this button for a couple seconds, and then it'll actually center that servo so you can align the track. To give you an idea, this is the Tam Valley website. They're relatively inexpensive. I can't remember. They're under $10 for the decoder, I think. And then the actual servo itself is not that expensive as well. The servos, I think, are less than 10 cents a piece. If there's a problem with it, then I can just pull up the track, replace the servo, and plug in a new servo. Now with the singlet servo, it's a basic servo. In other words, if I'm going to program it, I have to put a jumper over these two prongs here, right here, right there, and then what happens is then I'll activate the switch I want, and it programs it. And then this jumper here will actually tell it to do either a long throw or a half throw. And so right now I've got it on a long throw, but you could actually program it so the servo will only do half as much or do the full length. Another servo that I've used in the past for servos is made by ESU, and this is the Switch Pilot servo. And this only takes 4 servos right here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And what's nice about the Switch Pilot is I can actually take this and I can program the throw. So if I'm using it for anything but like a turnout, if I'm using it for something else, I can program that throw. So if I have like an articulated bridge or something like that that I want to swing, I could tell it where to stop and where to start. And so that's handy. But I use this for switches, and this works flawlessly. The only problem with this is its size. So with its size comes the problem. You know, here we are, this one compared to this. Of course, this does 4, and this does 1 switch. But when I'm mounting it, and I'm going to mount it into the foam, I'm going to be actually taking this. I'm going to take the switch off. Take this, and I'm going to adhere it to the back of this. So this thing will actually come around, and then just plug into here. I don't drop it. Like so. It'll go on. Yeah, it's stiff. And then I can sit there and I can actually hot glue it to the back of this here. I'll fix it somehow, or I might even, probably hot glue it, or double side tape it to here. I have to let the 2 DCC leads from my bus to go into the blue jumper right there. So the 2 wires going into it to control it. But once it's all together, it'll work fine. So, I mean, I could even glue it to the top here, and then cut out a little bit more foam just to allow the decoder. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do with that yet. So we'll just have to see. I meant to bring some foam with me, but of course I forgot. And I forgot my needle nose pliers too. You know, and then with the code, Atlas Code 55 track here, I've got a little loop here to power the frogs. So there's a couple ways I could do that. So I have one of these switches here I could use to power the frogs. And I could maybe affix it to this here so that when it rotates, put a longer arm on this so when it rotates, it'll actually depress this thing here and then change it. Or what I think is a better idea, and it's a little bit more money, what I do with it. Oh, here it is. Tam Valley makes what they call a frog juicer. So you have 2 DCC, your DCC input goes into it, and then the middle wire, will actually go to the frog. So it'll detect whether it's got a short on the frog and instantly change the polarity of the frog so you never have a short. Or I could just leave the frogs unpowered. But as long as I got these things, and I got a bunch of these things, I might as well just use them, right? For reverse loops, Tam Valley again comes to the rescue, and this is a dual frog juicer. So this is actually set up for a reverse loop, and so you can either use one of these for a reverse loop, or you can use this to power 2 frogs for frog juicing to get the correct polarity on the frog juicer. So I've used that before. I had the sticky on my last layout. I pulled all the stuff out so I can use it again. There's nothing wrong with it, but yeah, it just it really does a good job. It's instantaneous. Okay, so, and again, this is Atlas code 55, and then the code 100 is going to be the black stuff here. And so, I mean, there is a difference between the fineness of the ties and all that. And the rail, of course, is thicker on the code 80 than on the Atlas code 55. So there are a couple other switch machines that I could use, but I'm not going to use because they're just a little bit too big. And that would be these two. Now, the one on the left is going to be a Tortoise switch machine. The Tortoise is made in the USA. It's been around for a long, long time. It's used worldwide. The one on the left, the blue one, is actually a Cobalt switch machine. So the Cobalt is, what do you call it? It's made in Australia, I believe. And actually, the Cobalt I have has that decoder on the bottom, as you see there. And there's a good video on this Cobalt and the Tortoise switch machine. If you go into the description below, Tom's Trains and Things did a couple weeks ago or a week or so ago a video on the Cobalt and the Tortoise. The reason I'm not using either one is because they're tall. They're actually fairly tall, and it's going to stick out below the baseboard of my Cam Connect. Now, I could order Cam Connect with a thicker side base so it wouldn't stick out below, but I'm not going to do that because I already got it. I'm not going to reorder that stuff, okay? So, and I don't want to fix anything underneath the layout again. So I want it to be as much connected to the phone as possible. But anyway, the Tortoise is on the left, the green, and the Cobalt's on the right. One of the things that when you watch Tom's video on Tom's Trains and Things, you'll hear a big difference in the sound. The Tortoise is much quieter than the Cobalt. The Cobalt is really, really loud. Now, they're both servos, but it must be the gear mechanism inside that makes them so loud, because when I run the Cobalt, it's like you hear it all. I could be in my old layout. I had a computer controlled. If the route is free, it's going to set all those switches automatically at once. So if I had a train leaving the station, it would see, oh, okay, I had a ladder track that it went down. It switched all those machines at once, and I had all the Cobalts on that thing, and the thing just went off, and it would wake you up if you're in the room next door. Maybe not that bad, but it was pretty loud. I mean, I was in the kitchen one time. I left my train layout running by itself, doing its thing, and I could hear it whenever that train would go into the station. I'd hear all those switches go. And so that's just too loud for me. The servos like this are very, very quiet. Are they as reliable as the Tortoise or the Cobalt? I've never had one fail, but I have been running a layout for years and years and years to find out. Again, these are cheap little servos, so I don't think, unless they're overstressed, they have plastic gears in them. As long as you don't tell it to go past where it strips the gears, there's not that much tension or pressure on these things. So I think they'll be pretty good. But I'm going to make it so that I can lift that switch out if I have to. And it would be the same thing with cattle Unitrack. If a switch went bad, you just have to go through and take stuff up and replace the switch. So it's not much more trouble using one of these than it is a cattle Unitrack. Maybe the cattle, you hear a click, and then with this, you'll just hear a light vibration. Again, the wood bracket that I used was from Tam Valley. It's a switch right servo bracket, and it comes in this box. It comes with a wood piece, a couple screws, and a wire for each servo. So I got this, then I got the switch right servo motor, and then I also got some octa. As a TAM value, it'll do multiple servos at once with decoders. I didn't bring any with me. I'm working out of a bucket here, and I brought wire cutters, but I forgot needle nose pliers of all the things. So I can't properly bend the wire on this bottom part here. It's just kind of stuck in there. I didn't want to chip my teeth by trying to, be the man and wrangle that wire. So my wife would go, "How did you chip your tooth?" I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. I slipped and fell and hit something." "When did you do that?" Yeah. So trying to explain to the wife why I've got chipped teeth, and then her finding out that I was actually just trying to bend a wire with my tooth would probably not be so good, because then it costs money to get it fixed, and then she would get all upset, and she has me on a budget. Anyway, so I want to avoid all that. But trying to think of anything else. So that's the plan. This thing is going to go and be embedded into the surface of the 1 3/4 foam. Again, the servo is going to be glued up here or something along those lines. And then I just have to cut a hole big enough to put it down into. And it should be deep enough. The foam should be deep enough to accommodate it. I didn't actually measure this. Just watch. It's going to be like half an inch too long or something. But I should have some space underneath there that I can at least another half an inch in addition to the 1 3/4 foam. So that being said, Union Station is going to be made with code 55, Atlas code 55. The Unitrack is going to be used in remote locations where I can't have a harder time accessing it, and where I really need as much reliability or as close to 100% reliability as possible. So when they leave Union Station, I have one track, and in my previous Cam Connect, where I put the two pieces together, I left a 4-inch gap or so between the Cam Connect and the wall. Well, that's going to be actually a ramp where it's going to start going down, and it's going to be going down about 10 inches around the room. So it'll go down all the way down the one wall, and then make a corner and go down a little bit further to be about 10 or 12 inches. I don't want the gradients to be over 3%. 2% is really ideal. And then that's where the passenger trains are going to go, to a section where there's going to be a foot-wide shelf. They're going to make the loop underneath Union Station and come back and just sit. So the passenger, one of the interesting things, YouTube Model Builders, on their website, they also have an e-magazine. If you haven't subscribed to their e-magazine, you need to subscribe to their e-magazine. It's really a nice e-magazine. They had an issue on passenger trains, and they had a gentleman talking about who designs layouts, whose my mind is slipping right now because I can't remember. I wasn't thinking about talking about this, but since it's live, here I am. I'm going to ramble. Okay, so he was talking about people having these big ideas, and they want these passenger trains. And passenger trains usually had double main lines, and then they want to fit it into a 10-foot by 8-foot space, let's say, which is impossible to do. You just can't do it. And that's why I kind of model N scale, is because my scenery to train ratio is much better than HO. I love HO. If I could have HO, I would have HO. If I could have O scale, I would have O scale. I would just have to have a barn for O scale, right? So to accommodate huge passenger trains. But N scale for me in my space seems to be the fit. So I like all scales, but it's the scale that's right for me at this point in time. Maybe I'll have room later to do an HO scale layout. I don't know. But right now, N scale. So one thing with passenger trains, I'm not going to try to have them leave Union Station and then go to have another station somewhere like Milwaukee. That's going to be unspoken. It's going to be just like, okay, the train is going to New Orleans, it's going to Milwaukee, but we never see the train get there. The train's going to leave the station, it's going to go around the room, turn itself around and park itself, okay, in an unmodeled area, a yard. Okay, that's what the Atlas Code 80 is for. And it's just going to sit there. And I'm going to have like 5 or 6 trains that are just going to sit there. And then each one will come in at its own schedule, come to Union Station, and then go back to wherever it's going to go. Okay, so I'm not going to try to model a second station going where it's going to. It's just not going to work. The other stations are just going to be Chicago Metro, out and back, out and back, out and back type thing. I do want to model a coal train. So this is when, you have lofty expectations, right? Maybe it's a little bit too grandiose. I don't know. But when I was a kid, my dad used to work for the corporate offices for 2 of the largest coal companies in the United States. And one of them was Peabody Coal. And when Peabody, we lived in St. Louis, Missouri, where their national headquarters were, or international headquarters were. And so Peabody Coal had its own trains. And one of them was up in Indiana, south of Terre Haute. And so, south of Terre Haute. I can't remember the name of the town now. But anyway, they had a train there, and as a kid, I got to ride on the train. And I got to sit in the engineer's lap and pull the throttle and do all that cool stuff. So it has a special warm place in my heart. So when Bluford Shops came out with N-scale Peabody coal cars, I went and bought a number of them, and I bought a couple N-scale Atlas DCC Peabody coal locomotives. Even those weren't the locomotives we used. I went ahead and got them because they all matched in the paint scheme. And so I'm going to try and model a coal train. And so I'm not going to necessarily model where it's going to, but I'm going to model, here we go again, where it's going to, but where it picks up. So it's going to come up, and it's going to come to where they load the coal, and I'm going to program it so the train will stop on a car, give so many seconds, then like it's loading the next car, so many seconds, next car, so many seconds, next car, so many seconds, etc. And it's going to be done all digitally with the computer. So I won't have to, it'll do its own thing. And then it'll go off to the power plant, and then you won't see it until it comes back to get a refill. And I'll probably put magnets in the loads, and so I can take the magnets out, take the loads out, so it comes back empty, and then stick the loads back in for fun, realistic. Okay, so anyway, so that's the idea. Again, to kind of recap, you got the Tam Valley, you got ESU, switch pilot servos, you got the Tortoise, you got the Cobalt. There's multiple ways you can power a servo with digitally, DCC. And I even think of course, Digitrax makes a unit, and I forget the unit number it is, which I'm probably going to use for the Atlas Code 80, because these are twin coil, click, click, click type thing. And so I need a switch machine for that. I do have some of the European DigiKeys switch machines, but I need an adapter for it, some screwy thing. So I'm probably going to mess with that too. The local net that I'm using Roku Z21, which is right here, Roku Z21. It's just this black box, and everything else is controlled by your smartphone. So you can plug in handsets. I can plug in a Digitrax handset. I can do just about anything, but I have to. But that's just the box. It's designed to be run via your iPhone, iPad, your Android phone, whatever. Very cool interface. I would show you the interface on my phone. Now my screen is cracked. But to give you an idea, so that's the interface control panel. And then you can, of course it's disconnected, I can control the throttles there. I can pick which locomotive I want down there. And then if I want to switch switches, I can go in here and switch. I can put my whole layout in this thing on multiple pages, and then I can control it that way. So you can see my nice cracked face. And then I can change locomotives. If I turn it sideways, I can actually put two locomotives side by side. At least I thought you could. Of course, when I'm doing it now, it doesn't want to do it for me, right? So, damn it. So anyway, that's it. And then I can program everything through my phone. It's graphic, and I don't have to remember weird codes. So, but that's it. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments below. If you like the live video and want more live videos, I'm up for it. I'll do a better job next time. I'll have, it's not on my cheesy little, well, it's not cheesy, but it's a low powered laptop. So I'm hoping everything comes through okay. I know there's some people watching. I don't know if you have any questions or comments. If you do, go ahead and ask them. If not, then we'll say ta-ta, I guess. So, can't think anything else to say. Listen, again, if you haven't subscribed, please hit that little subscribe button. This side? Is everything backwards? It's going to be this side. It's going to be down here. Down here. Everything's backwards. Mess me up. So, if you have any questions or comments, please subscribe. Hit that little bell icon next to it, and you'll be notified whenever I'm going to be live streaming or whether I'm going to post a video. I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.